if a guy's from a breakup or he's trying to get into a new relationship, a lot of the times, they can talk about how they started implementing a lot of the stuff that is mentioned with red pill ideologies, and they'll talk about how they seem to be having so much success. Give that nigga pussy and a loving partner, and
the royal penis is clean, Your Highness.
welcome to the Breakdown Podcast, where I talk about love, sex, and relationships from a guy's perspective, as well as a bunch of other guy shit. The man on the mic is a man who might find it hard to breathe if you've got that asthma. He is also a man who may consider jumping to conclusions to his cardio routine. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B, and I am here to talk about relationships. And I know, it sounds like it's something boring, but I promise you, this is relationship talk, but I feel like it mostly affects single people, mainly because there's a lot of us that seem to be having trouble with relationships, and the wildest part is, on one end it's relationships with other people, on the other end it's relationships with some of our ideologies, for at least some of us, because some of y'all are holding on to ideologies for a little too long, but on the flip side, you're not even holding on to relationships for long enough. And it's not even some of y'all on the relationships part, it's most of y'all. Most of y'all seem to be having trouble holding on to relationships, or at least getting into some of them for some of these cases. And I do intend on looking into what that all means, why that's the case, and if we can actually solve it. But while I do that, I hope you do like what it is that you're listening to, and should you like it, should you not like it, should you have a different form of feedback, or should you want to suggest a potential topic and or guest for the podcast, then my DMs are always open. The links to the social media are usually in the description, and should you not feel like looking at the description, be it above, below, or to the side, or wherever it is that you're listening from, then you can always listen all the way till the end, because I always mention them there. But all in all, with that said, I do thank you for listening, and I do hope that you listen all the way till the end. Now, with all of that said, I do want to kick things off by talking about feminism. Now, for those of y'all that have listened to this podcast for a particularly long time, you know that I've spoken about feminism quite a bit, and you also know that I haven't spoken very positively about it. Now, it's not that I have a problem with feminism itself and the original idea of feminism, I just don't like what it is that it's been turned to over the recent years. And some people have agreed with me, others haven't, but all in all, my stance has remained mostly the same. But now, when I stumbled across this particularly interesting video that a woman put up where she spoke about feminism being a young woman's sport, I did wonder if I should maybe speak up for the feminists in a way, but at the same time I also considered that she might actually be right about what she was saying. Now, I do want to get into my thoughts on the entire thing, but first, before I can say anything, I'll let the clip play. So without further ado,
22 is the cutoff. We shouldn't be 25, 26, 27 being a feminist. That's silly. Come on. That is for children. You know what I mean? Imagine crying to the government while saying fuck the government. It makes no sense. If you identify as a feminist, that is like a signal to society that you are a confused woman. You have no idea what's going on in the world. You have no idea how we got here. All the faults of feminism you blame on capitalism, but then you're fighting for the right to be a part of capital. Like, it's just really crazy. Once you're 22, if you haven't started to figure out that, hey, gender roles actually are good for society and I gotta get married, you're fucked. You're fucked. Okay? You're fucked. Some of y'all like to wait till the last minute till you're 30 or something to try to change your mind. It's not happening. You gotta, the activism, the liberalism, the feminism, 18 to 22. We shouldn't be seeing 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds at the protests. You know what I mean? Like, okay, like feminism is a young woman's sport. Let them have that. Let them have their fun, kiki. Once you turn 22, 23, it's time to find you a man and lock it up, okay? Because, like, what do you mean? What do you mean? You're gonna be 40 protesting for women's rights? That's what you're gonna do? Right.
Okay. So this lady did actually put it across pretty interestingly about how feminism isn't an older woman's sport. or a cougar sport. It's mostly for young women, and after 22, you should have dropped that shit. Okay, now, do I agree with what she's saying or nah? Honestly, I'd say yes and no. Not because everything that she said is true or false, or 50% true or 50% false. I'd probably say that I would make a few adjustments with some of the things that she's saying, but for the most part, she did speak quite a bit of sense. And yeah, I do agree. Feminism is, when you kind of think about it, a young woman's sport. There's a lot about feminism that you can argue, should transcend the ages and shit, but when you look at a lot of what feminism is right now, and I'm not talking about feminism from back in the day, I'm talking about feminism right now, it is effectively, as she said, a young woman's sport. And the reason I say this is because a lot of what feminism has turned into just doesn't really seem like something that should appeal to a lot of women past a certain age. Now, I'm not saying that it's bad if it appeals to you past a certain age, or, at whatever age that you have, decided to adopt it. But for the most part, if you take a look at the origins of feminism and what the first wave of feminism was fighting for the most part, I think bar like one thing, of which that one wasn't even the biggest thing, everything else has basically been achieved. Because I actually did try to look into what the first wave of feminism basically was trying to fight for. And one, there was the suffering of women, so they wanted their own agency and they wanted the right to vote. There was the whole idea of not being looked at as a property of the man, or being the property of a man. And so they wanted to be recognized as individuals and also have rights and also be able to own land and shit, and also be able to go for higher education and take on different job roles, not just the ones that are specifically suited to them as per some person's belief. Like, they basically fought for a bunch of things, and as a result, all of those things have come to pass, and most women today do enjoy the luxury of, the women that fought for feminism. And out of everything that the first wave of feminism basically fought for, like, you can see that all of them have basically come to pass. Now, the one that was also being fought for, although not as much, was just the idea of bodily autonomy, if I can put it like that, but more so just the ability for a woman to decide whether they are going to keep the kid or whether they're not going to keep the kid. Essentially, basically, abortion rights and shit, if you can call it that. Of which that wasn't really taken up as much. It became more of a second wave feminism thing. And even then, modern science, or should I say science from the 60s, basically covered that and figured it out with the pill. We've had more and more contraceptions for women since then. And so you can argue that even then, like, technically feminism did its job. So any other wave that's come after that has basically tried to improve on it, or just try to achieve a goal that tries to align itself with what feminism was. And so you look at it like, yeah, it does make sense. Feminism in and of itself has basically done what it was supposed to have done, and young girls and grown women are benefiting from that. So if you see people, demonstrating against it, at least right now it looks like it's just pushing for a lot that doesn't really seem to make a lot of sense to women, especially when they hit a certain milestone in their lives, or, they come to some sort of realization about life. And you see this quite a bit whenever you find young women joining corporate, or they get into the workplace, they realize how tough it can be, then they look at bills that they have to pay once they move out. And so at some point they actually realize, I'd probably be better off being a traditional woman. It's just, they wouldn't mind also keeping the rights to vote and some of the other things that the first wave of feminism asked for. So you can clearly see, like, what this babe is saying actually does carry a lot of sense. The only thing that I would probably say to tweak it is that I don't think that 22 would be the cutoff point. I feel like it's more like 25, 26, maybe max 27 or 28. Just mostly because there's a lot of women that will need to take some time, doing the whole adulting thing, running the rat race, before it hits them that, maybe we shouldn't be fighting the men that we want to be with us. Maybe we shouldn't be speaking so ill of men. And yet these are the same men that we expect to be our husbands, our boyfriends, are our relatives, and we expect to protect us whether they like us or they know us or they don't. So you kind of look at it, over time it's supposed to break down, And yes, there are some women that end up going a lot longer with it, but like this woman said, it does kind of make you seem like you are very clueless and a little bit confused. But even with that said, like, I don't think this is just the case for feminism. I think even the red pill community, which is basically the manosphere, if you would call it that for right now, like, I feel like right now's red pill community also carries the same exact problem. Like, it's useful and guys can have it for a while, but it gets to a point where you kind of have to drop it. Now, of course, it does get to an age where someone will tell you should probably drop it, but I feel like even for feminism, it's more of a circumstantial thing rather than an age thing. Now, this babe spoke about 22 maybe because she was looking at if you want to settle down and have a long-term relationship with someone from like the age of 23 or something. But when you look at it, even for the men, you could argue about the same thing. The only thing is, I would probably stretch it out a little bit further. But when I look at it, I feel like if you're a guy in your 20s, being a part of the red pill community and believing the red pill does make sense, but at some point you should probably drop it. Reason being, I believe that the red pill community does have its usefulness and it can be helpful, but there are places where it does come up short. More so when you get into the relationship side of things. So if you are trying to attract a babe, or if you are trying to get from a breakup, then it does make sense. And at some point, when you actually look at both of these ideologies, you find that they both have the same problem, but at the same time, the thing that breaks a lot of people away from these ideologies is basically the same. So you look at it and you find that the one challenge that affects both of these ideologies is the fact that it alienates you from the opposite sex, but you also realize that the thing that will probably solve all of this, but also take people out of these ideologies, is just them getting with a good loving partner. Because you look at feminism, babes will be out here busy preaching feminism, but you give them a chance in the corporate workspace for a bit of time, they experience the stagnation, the issues with the rat race, how they're losing a bunch of money to corruption and shit, and how bills just keep on stacking up. And at that point in time, suddenly they're like, you know what, if I was a traditional wife, I wouldn't mind it. Give them a good loving partner and they will not give a fuck about feminism as it exists right now. You look at guys, pretty much the same thing. If a guy's from a breakup or he's trying to get into a new relationship, a lot of the times, you know, they can talk about how they started implementing a lot of the stuff that is mentioned with red pill ideologies, and they'll talk about how they seem to be having so much success. Give that nigga pussy and a loving partner, and that nigga will drop those red pill ideologies in an instant. Guys will typically shed off red pill ideologies as though it's like bad skin, usually because they realize that they have a loving partner, so they don't have to exercise a lot of the paranoia and super awareness that they might probably have been told to have as red pill guys. And then at some point they realize that if you have a good loving partner, most of those ideologies actually don't really work or make sense or even affect your relationship, provided you care about your partner and they care about you. So when you get to that point, you're like, you know what, why bother? So I agree. This whole thing of like feminism, and I'd also argue the red pill community being finite, is particularly true. Once you get into something pretty solid, you realize just how a lot of those ideologies don't carry as much weight, and you kind of just drop them so that you can move on a little bit better as a person. But with all of that said, I am going to leave it at that and move it on to our main topic of this episode. Now, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I feel like over time, one thing that I've been noticing is the fact that there's a lot of people, I'm not going to say everyone, but I feel like there's a lot of people that just seem like they're having a lot of trouble staying in relationships long term. And we've been talking about how tough it is to get into a relationship. Or at least I can say for a fact that I've spoken quite extensively about the issues affecting people whenever they're trying to get into relationships right now. What I haven't spoken about as much is the fact that people haven't been staying in relationships as long, and that is equally becoming a bit of an issue. Now, when I look at it, there are different reasons for that, and people can give a bunch of hypotheticals, but when I stumbled upon a particularly interesting Reddit post online this last week, something in this post made me realize that we might actually be having a problem with retaining people in relationships. And this isn't like a problem that affects a few people. This might be a problem that's affecting a lot of people. Now, I won't even lie to you, this post isn't even about any of that. It's just about a guy and his 4 friends and how for some reason, they wouldn't be particularly good at advising people in relationships because they haven't been in relationships for particularly long. And, he kind of talks about each and every one of the friends. Now, I am going to read the post, then get into my thoughts on the entire thing. So, the post is titled, "This 4 Friends of Mine." And it says, and I quote, "Somehow, for the past 1 year, I have been off of the relationship scene. I have been with my campus friends since we were fresh, a circle of 5 dudes. Since year 1, I have never added anyone else to my circle. So something interesting about us is that none of us has ever really been loved for who they are. Like none of us can advise anyone about relationships. Now let's call my friends J, KN, KG and B. J had been getting random flings until some chick called him an egocentric maniac back in second year and he never recovered from that. KN is like our gang big bro. He got a lot working but not a relationship. Ask him why and he will say, it's not worth my attention now, plus I can get a hookup just by a call. KG is just there. He's not bothered about anything. He's always asking where is the lighter. Had a girl in first year and somehow he found her cheating. Tried another, got cheated on and that was it. B's work is fitness, PES and just going to the gym. He's been banging some MILF. Then there's me. Quiet, introverted, had a friends with benefits but it faded away. The last time I was obsessed with someone, it didn't go well. What about your circle, guys?" End quote. Okay, so as you can probably hear, and as I can probably tell you from what it is that I read, all of these guys aren't in any stable, what you would argue, long-lasting relationships. Most of them are in particularly short-term ones, if they are in them. But for the most part, it's either they just haven't been in long-term relationships for a while, or if they have been in some sort of relationship, they kind of had to ditch that and they haven't gone back into it for a while. And the thing is, you'd probably suspect that this is something that affects, just his friends or just a small subset of people. But I can probably even say, not that I have the largest group of friends, but a lot of people that I know are in roughly about the same pickles as far as just singlehood is concerned. Now, don't get me wrong, me knowing a bunch of people doesn't really mean that this is the case for everyone, but I do think that this has been a rising issue for a lot of people. It's just that we're not talking about it as much. And I'll probably say, for example, in my close circle of guy friends, I'd say that 2 of them are married, 1 of them has a kid. The other one is even younger than me, but he got married last year. I can probably say that the other 3 are pretty single as well. And 1 of them tried to have something fairly serious last year, but it didn't turn out all that great. The other one tried the whole messing around thing, but it hasn't been working out as well. And another one just isn't dating or even attempting to meet people from the opposite sex like that. So, granted, my close circle probably isn't indicative of most people. But there was a comment here that I saw which was very, very funny and actually does relate to just how tough it can be out here. So this person said, and I quote, "My inner circle, which is childhood friends, K is married, 2 kids, loyal husband and wife as far as I know. C is married, 2 kids, he is a womanizer per excellence. M is with a long-term partner, 1 2-year-old kid, dude is a womanizer per excellence. MT has 1 kid, womanizer. E has a long-term partner, no kids, womanizer. My outer circle, which is the current circumstantial close acquaintances, B is a senior bachelor, womanizer, no kids. M has 3 kids from 2 baby mamas, 2 part-time relationships with 2 other women, and an occasional womanizer. T thinks he's in love, but I know the woman is using him for money. Opportunist womanizer struggling hard to be a good guy. W stuck in a loveless marriage, 3 kids." End quote. And here's the thing. I read this, and first of all, it just sounded like this guy has a messy set of friends. But the interesting thing is, this situation seems a lot more indicative for a lot of people around, because if I open up my circle of friends and I start including other people, more so women, there's a lot of people that either aren't in serious relationships that have lasted long, or just haven't been in relationships, period, for a while. And I'm not judging anyone, I'm not saying that it's wrong or it's right, it's just I find it very interesting, because you could argue maybe 20, 30 years ago, it was the other way around. Most people were either in a serious relationship or they're single and maybe they're trying to get into one. So when I look at a lot of these comments from people that are busy talking about, oh, you know, these guys this, these guys that, I feel like this is a problem, not necessarily even just for guys. This is just a problem with a lot of people right now that can be or are in the dating market. Just very minimal experience with long-term relationships. And not only are people having trouble with just trying to attract a good partner, but people aren't even staying long enough for them to turn it into a serious relationship. So I kind of had to think about this for a bit. And when I thought about it, because you know, it is something that is becoming a little bit more of a common thing for people, I kind of had to ask myself why it's getting harder for people to either get into a serious relationship or even just retain one. I kind of came with probably about 3 main reasons for it. So the first one that I found was that there's more steps before you get into a relationship, and most people aren't even getting to the end. And I could argue that that's probably because of past traumas, and also the fact that people believe that nowadays you should be taking more time to vet the person. And, you know, while it's not a bad thing, it is something that has resulted in a lot fewer people getting into relationships. And it's sort of this mindset where you're trying to avoid trouble, you're trying to avoid problems by selecting as critically as possible instead of just selecting and then figuring out over time. So in a way, it's just trying to avoid failure instead of failing forward. And while it's not a bad thing, it does mean that there's a lot of people that probably don't give relationships a chance, yet they probably could have done a little bit better. Mostly because when you're in a talking stage, when you haven't gotten into a serious relationship yet, you find that there's a lot that people can hold back, both good and bad. They can either keep someone there or probably make them leave and find someone else a little bit quicker. So a lot of people end up being stuck in that limbo area, which has a bunch of different stages, of which those stages for some reason just seem to add up a little bit more every few years. Then the second reason that I found is that there's less social reward for being in a good relationship, so people are basically left to their morality, which can very easily be bent based off of their strength of will. Now, the reason I say this is because back in the day, I believe that you not being in a stable relationship and you not seeming like a good partner, I'm not saying being, but seeming like a good partner, would have you labeled in a not so nice way, and you would be used as a lesson for younger people, or should I say younger people that are heading towards your level, to try and have them deviate from that path so that they can choose one that has a little bit more stability and community. Nowadays, for some reason, it's like people have started to glorify the person that sleeps with a lot of women. We've glorified the woman that seems to have their way as far as men is concerned. You know, we've basically glorified a lot of singlehood, a lot of individualism, and even when we're getting to a point where people are doing articles talking about how relationships are boring nowadays, you can see how it's kind of driving that wedge between the social reward of being there and you actually trying to get to that point. So considering that the social reward just seems so low for you being in a good long-term relationship, you find that most people aren't even trying to be in a good long-term relationship. If they're in a long-term relationship, some people are just trying to play away games, other people are just trying to hang on. And as a result, if they leave that long-term relationship, then either they take a while before they get into another one, or if they're getting into another one, they're taking things in a very casual manner. And as a result of that, like, it just means that there's fewer people that are trying to get into something long-term or are even trying to retain something long-term, because they're like, you know what, why would I stay long-term with someone, yet they have this and this and this flaws. But with that said, the last reason that I found was people like to pick and choose, and this optionality might actually be killing people's chances because it's just easier to pick and choose what it is that you want. There's babes out here that will pick and choose based on, say, the guy that is the most generous to them, or the guy that probably lays the best pipe, where it's like, oh, this guy has amazing pipe, but I don't think he'd make for a good boyfriend. Or this guy is very generous and he treats me really nicely, but I don't think he'd be all that great because he doesn't look like a leader. He doesn't carry himself in this way or that way. I'd have expected him to do this. He doesn't look the way I'd want him to, but I want to enjoy the benefits of this. Guys will, on the other hand, be like, you know what, I like the fact that I'm getting pussy from this babe, but there's nothing that I would want in the name of something serious. I will probably accept to have a kid with, let's say, so and so, but it's not like I would settle down with them. Like, people are picking and choosing, and it's like, oh, I don't mind having a kid with you, but I will not wife you. Or, oh, I don't mind being with you because you're sweet and you're kind, but if the highest bidder comes in, or if a higher bidder comes in, or a guy that has more big dick energy, or, looks the way I'd want a guy to look, then I'm probably going to ditch you for that person. But for now, it's okay. We can just continue fooling around in the meantime. Like, I feel like people have decided to do the whole pick and choose thing, and it might actually be hurting people, because when you're doing the whole pick and choose, the person that you might pick and choose, or the person that you might look at as an alternative, might not look at you as a long-term partner, and the person that you are taking for a short-term ride that might want something serious either isn't voicing shit, or if they are voicing it, you're not going to take them very seriously because they're not fitting the aesthetic or the things that you would want from a long-term partner. And there's also just the whole endless talking stage thing that will probably have people just picking and choosing based off of whether they like what it is that you're saying. And so as a result of those three main reasons, I find that people just over time kind of make it harder for themselves to get into relationships, and more so just long-lasting ones, the ones that they can actually try to be in. And so now that I've mentioned all of this, now the next question is there a way that we can fix it? How can we fix it? And to be honest, the easiest answer that I came up with in this is we all need therapy. All right. We all need therapy. We need to go and release the endless trauma that we've gotten that has had us basically creating more and more roadblocks towards getting into a serious relationship. But I think the less simplified version of this is we need to start trying to fail forward a little bit more. In that, yes, maybe it could be a talking stage thing, but if you can just try to be with people, you move on from one person to the next, but you also give yourself some time to just get some R&R and not necessarily just chase pleasure, maybe, just maybe, you might actually nail having a good partner over time. Also, maybe we should be a little bit more lenient with people. Yes, I know your peace is paramount, but maybe we should give people a little bit more rope instead of keeping the rope tight such that if they pull a little bit, all of a sudden it snaps and the entire thing is broken. But with all of that said, let me just conclude by saying that long-term relationships are currently in short supply, and it's very likely that over time might actually become a rare commodity. So maybe if we shifted our perspective into trying to keep things together, and maybe even failing forward, instead of not selecting a problem or avoiding selecting a red flag, then maybe, just maybe, we might have a chance of having relationships that can actually last longer than a couple of months or even a couple of weeks. Although, then again, I am saying this and I'm someone who hasn't really been in a long-term relationship for a while, so maybe I'm wrong about this. Maybe I'm clueless. Either way, I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open. On IG, it is at the breaktime_podcast. On Facebook, it is at the breaktime podcast. On X, it is at Bagakthed. And on Bluesky, it is at the breaktimepod.bsky.social. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.
But what I believe is that if you put a pastor and a prostitute in one room, one is likely to convert the other.